He called it the biggest decision of his life. And that decision was to come back to play at Georgia. Now, Carson Beck was talking about the decision that he had made already, but not informed everyone of, or at least the public, that he would come back to Georgia. And when you think about where we are right now in not just college football, but at Georgia specifically, this is the first time a quarterback has come back with eligibility um, who's had a traditional run. In other words, not Stetson Bennett, in a long time, probably since Aaron Murray. So let's think about from, Matthew Stafford. Obviously, Joe Cox did not start the year before. And then you go Aaron Murray, and he decides to come back after the 12 season for 13. 14 1 year with Hudson Mason, 15 total disaster at quarterback with Grayson Lambert and then Fatone Balta. 16, you have Jacob Eason giving way eventually in 17 to Jake Fromm, who in 2020 decides not to come back. And you get my point here is this has not been a common thing. The other thing I think to notice or to kind of plan for, one of the things that when I was looking back on things years ago was Mike Bobo under second-year quarterbacks those guys had huge jumps. Now, Matthew Stafford was probably the biggest example of it, and although he was not the offensive coordinator with David Green, there was a pretty big jump there from 01 to 02. And, of course, David had to suffer through David's offensive line in 03 gave up more sacks than I think anybody can remember. It was almost 40 sacks, or it was 40 sacks, whatever it was. Someone can correct me by texting me that. I think we're looking that up. But that was a challenging time for David, who also came back in 2004. I think the difference here is for Carson, David certainly was looking to win the national championship. Stetson had just done that. I think the difference here is that individually speaking, David Green was not, I don't know if this is the right word to use. David Green was not given the individual accolades that Carson Beck is coming into his final season. Aaron Murray, to some degree, was, but I think it took a lot of his career to earn the respect of the Georgia fan base, Aaron. And then, of course, his senior season, he left Sanford hurt. That's another story for another day. I was underneath the stadium for that and watched him get into a Georgia State Patrol car going to the hospital. That was tough to watch. And then Stetson, and then they won the national championship. And in his discussion with Kirby, he didn't understand why he should leave. Now, there were a lot of people that told Stetson he should go, by the way. I mean, I know that's the case because they told me. They told me they had talked with him, which is not something I talked about at the time. But there were a lot of folks that said, hey, man, it's why not just go out on top? And I think for Stetson, the argument was, yeah, I will, again. But I think, too, at that time, too, no one thought Georgia was going to repeat. I thought it was not out of the realm of possibility. I remember talking to somebody in the summer. Is August the summer? I guess it is. I see, because that's really the fall to me in many ways, but it actually is the summer. But anyway, it was so hot outside, that's why I remember it being the summer. I remember talking to somebody who was going to a practice or two in August, and they said, man, I don't think Georgia can repeat, but that defense is really fast. And I remember saying to them, and the person may remember it, because sometimes they watch these, I said, I think they can repeat. I just think it's really going to be hard to do it. This team here, I mean, they probably should win the national championship in 24. Now, I can say that, but I don't have to go out there and do it, right? I'm not lifting right now, and I'm not running at 5. We ran at 5:45. It was awful too. So I'm not the one getting ready for the season. I'm not the one who will have, there's a difference between a big game in the regular season and a terminal game where you can lose and be out. There's a different feel. There's a different excitement to the stadium. There's this different panic that sets in around that you can feel. I don't have to get ready for all that. Carson and them do. So when he talks about, coming back, the other thing that was not the case for David, Aaron or Stetson, none of those guys would have been considered, a first round draft pick. David obviously went in the third round, I think it was, to the Seahawks. It might have been the fourth, but I think it was the third. And then you had, Aaron go into the Chiefs or the Eagles. I can't even remember. But I don't think he'd have held Patrick Mahomes off myself, but that's me. Carson could. I mean, I don't think Carson could go number 1 overall, but people love quarterbacks. And when you look at like the Falcons or, even with Justin Fields, this guy went 12th overall, whatever it was. They were going to, not a great organization, I will say that. But it's very likely he is not going to be their starting quarterback, and they just drafted him in the first round not that long ago. So the Justin, you can keep your Justin hate in the comments. My point with all of that is Baker Mayfield's a great example. They just, quarterbacks, unless you are one of the top 10 guys, maybe 15 at the most, you're going to get cycled out. You're going to get cycled out. And until you have that second contract, and I think the Eagles may have jumped the gun with Jalen Fields Jalen Hurts on his second contract, and the Dolphins are thinking about what they're doing there with Tua. My point is, Mac Jones, he ain't ever going to be a starter at the Patriots again. There's so much that can happen. It's almost like back in the day, if you drafted a guy number 1, he wasn't going to play the first year. He was going to watch, or he was going to play at the end of the year. And then, now people are saying, we want to know. They throw him out there at the beginning, and that starts to cycle to where, like, I don't think something's going to happen to Bryce Young, but they throw him out there, and like in 2 years, we could know if he's the Panthers guy or not. Well, I don't know, when you look around, besides C.J. Stroud, who is certainly the guy coming out of this past class, that means there's positions open. I'm just off the top of my head, the Vikings would think of. I mean, the Vikings, I don't think the Colts would go away from Richardson this fast, but the Vikings for sure. And then you've got just everybody else that's kind of out there. I mean, who's going to replace Matthew Stafford? If there was an opportunity there for Stetson, could that be Carson in the future? I mean, I don't know. But that's the other thing about Carson's return. This was a huge decision for him, for sure, and his family. But this is a little different than the last few times. I mean, I think it goes without saying that what he said, I think it was to Warren Brinson, is true. He wants to win his, quote, own national championship. It's not the same when you're not the starting quarterback. I mean, I don't think, anybody's taking away the national championship from Xavier Truss, he put a lot. I think it was a smart move to come back. I think it was the right move for a lot of reasons, but it is a gamble. And, for Carson, that means, can I work myself into a first round draft pick? That's a better position for quarterbacks typically. Do I have the ability? Yes, the answer to this next one is yes. Do I have the ability to lead this team to a national championship? Yes. And that will be what Georgia fans will remember him by. I mean, there's a lot of people are much more romantic now about Matthew Stafford than they were. I well remember what it was like online as it existed at the time about Matthew, and at the time, which is he didn't win a division. People were up in arms about that when he was at Georgia, like that was like his fault. I mean, it just wasn't a great program like it is now. So, and they were going head up against Florida, which was a very good program at that moment. Now people, of course, want Matthew to succeed, and they always did. But I'm just saying, if you don't win at all or you don't win the conference, people hold it against you. There's always going to be haters out there. There's always going to exist. But for Carson, I mean, it's all right there for him. And there's just really not a lot, I would say, in his way from accomplishing that in the regular season. They got to get ready for the playoffs or playoff, whatever it's called. I don't know when it goes from singular to plural, but because there's always been more than one game in the college football playoff. But he made the right call, but he's gonna he did roll the dice, and it's gonna be time for him to get the job done in 2024, because there's not another. I mean, he won't be coming back for 2025. That won't happen. So it's all on the line for Carson Beck. Thanks for watching.